Right, let's take you to another developing matter that we're keeping a very close eye on. Protests having broken out in many cities as the militant group Rapid Support Forces massacred hundreds of people in the Darfur region. The RSF has been fighting government forces in Sudan that has led to thousands killed and millions displaced. We bring in Chrispin Phiri to give us a sense of some of these developments from DIRCO. A very good afternoon to you, Chrispin. Thank you so much for your time. What began more than 2 years ago as a power struggle between the regular army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has escalated into a brutal fight for territorial control. How, as a department, are you interpreting these developments?
Thank you for having us. What we have seen thus far in Sudan is definitely genocidal acts by the armed forces, RSF, the paramilitary force, as well as the corresponding the Sudanese forces, rather. So we really do condemn these actions. The government has since noted that the AU at least has had a Peace and Security Council meeting on these matters, and that is something that we welcome. We really do believe that this conflict will be resolved not through belligerent acts and continuous arming of the various conflicting forces, but rather by decisive action from the African Union, and we think that we are seemingly heading towards such a space.
Decisive action will be quite crucial, more so as we know that there are several players in the conflict at the moment in Sudan. How does South Africa view the role of these external powers like Egypt, the UAE or others in influencing the direction of the conflict?
To the extent that these countries that you mentioned are actually arming and providing armed support to these conflicting parties, we condemn that. And in fact, we really call upon them to cease such conduct, rather to channel their energies towards a process that will lead to a civilian-led government, to a process that is politically inclusive and one that will ensure that there's just peace. But to the extent that these acts actually lead to the catastrophe that we are seeing now, a humanitarian crisis. In fact, it's a humanitarian catastrophe that is unparalleled in the world currently. We really condemn that, and we think that to that extent, they run the risk of being complicit to genocidal acts. And we also want to say that we really do believe that there should be no impunity whatsoever in this conflict. Even in wars, and Paul, there is a manner in which a war must be conducted in a manner that doesn't harm civilians, in a manner that ensures that civilian infrastructure is preserved. But what we are seeing in Sudan is a complete violation of international law, international humanitarian law, and those who are complicit and those who are aiding this level of impunity must be held accountable.
With your call for civilians not to be harmed, you've also just made mention that the African Union has called an emergency meeting to discuss this matter. We also have the understanding that the UN Security Council has also announced that it will hold a closed consultation session regarding the situation. What outcome should these kind of interventions present?
An immediate ceasefire, and to ensure that there's unparalleled, unhindered access to humanitarian aid. The statistics that we are seeing currently now in Sudan show that more than half of the population, and that's in excess of 30 million people, need access to humanitarian aid. So whatever process that comes forward now from these august bodies, it should really result in an immediate ceasefire and to ensure that we're able to facilitate the access of humanitarian aid at an unparalleled and unhindered scale, because it really requires that level of intervention.
In a different matter, another developing story that we've been closely monitoring, Hurricane Melissa leaving a trail of destruction, killing dozens in Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, with storms now churning towards the Bahamas. What is your reaction on that matter?
Yeah, the South African government sends its condolences to the people of the Caribbean, various nations in the Caribbean who are affected by the storm. We are closely monitoring the situation to assess whether there are any South Africans affected. And if they are affected, then we will ensure that there are necessary means to evacuate them, and we will also be able to update the necessary families. But to this extent, we've not heard anything that there are any South Africans, but we are closely monitoring the situation. And once again, send our condolences to the people of the Caribbean, Jamaica, Dominican Islands, and other countries in the Caribbean who have been affected by this destruction. But once again, it proves that climate change is not a hoax, it's a lived reality, and this is what we are seeing. Some of these catastrophes, climate catastrophes, are really, really having a ravaging impact on the people of the world. And those who believe it's a hoax, well, this is the lived reality of what we are seeing now.
You say that so far no South Africans have called for assistance. Should they want to get that sort of assistance, what are the steps that will need to be followed on both ends as you try and bring them back home through that evacuation process?
They would have to make contact with our embassy, and all of the information is available on our website. As you have mentioned, there are various countries that are affected, so it would require affected citizens to just acquaint themselves with the details of the various embassies in those countries. And from there, we would then see what the scale of impact is and what level of evacuation is required for us to see what can be done from a humanitarian point of view.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this afternoon. DIRCO spokesperson Chrispin Phiri giving us a sense of the government's take on the matters in South Sudan. Of course, calling for human lives to be spared as the matter is a developing matter that we will continue to keep a very close eye on, as well as what's happening with Hurricane Melissa. Calls for South Africans to ensure that they make sure that they get assistance from the embassies should evacuation be required. So far, we know that no South Africans have called for assistance, but it's a story that we will continue to monitor.